This is a podcast about both having autism and living with someone who has autism. My mom is Sonya, and I'm Josh, and this is Josh Has Autism.
Hey everybody, welcome to Josh Has Autism.
Hello.
So happy that everybody's here with us again.
Yeah.
Getting back in the swing of things.
Yeah.
So I want to talk to you. The other day you had an appointment with your psychiatrist.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the questions she asked is, how do you learn? You know, how best do you receive information, retain information? And so it made me think that's a good question because everybody's different. Autism or not, everybody's different.
Right.
But it made me think about that. So I'm interested in that. So how do you learn?
So I'm making all these grunting noises trying to find the right words. We should probably say what the different kinds of learning are.
Sure.
Off the top of my head, I remember 3 of them, I think. And I'm pretty sure there's another one, but I don't remember what it is. So there is visual learning. I think reading is also included in that, where you see something and you learn it that way. You learn to do something or about something that way.
By reading about it.
Not just reading, but like you see it done and you learn that way.
I think that's 2 different ways. I think if you read it, that's one way of learning. Some people retain more if they read it.
Not by watching a video of it or something?
Watching a video of it?
Yeah, is that still not visual? I don't know. That's...
Well, reading is not... I don't think of reading as visual. I mean, I know you use your eyes, so it's visual, but if I read something versus if I hear somebody telling me how to do something, that's very different. If I watch a video about something being done, that's also very different.
So, auditory learning is another one.
Mm-hmm.
So that's hearing something and learning it that way.
Mm-hmm.
The third way is called, I believe the official term is called kinesthetic learning, which is learning by doing. Do you have a list of all the different learning? No?
No. No, because I was asking you how you learn best.
Well,
I mean, I can look it up.
Yeah,
Keep talking. I can look it up.
So I know that with me, I have a mix of ways I learn. One of them, which is the secondary one, I believe, is the one that I thought was visual, which I thought includes reading. So I'm not sure if...
So I have it right here.
Okay.
This is Learning Styles. It's from Wilfrid Laurier University. It says, there are 4 predominant learning styles: visual, auditory, read-write, and kinesthetic.
Okay.
In case you want to, really mix things up, there's another link here for 7 ways of learning. There's another link of 12 ways of learning.
No. Can you explain? Can you read off the difference between read and writing and audio and visual? Because kinesthetic's pretty straightforward.
So visual learners learn through visual displays of information. And diagrams, charts, pictures, things like that. So it says like when people are taking notes, they rewrite words with symbols or initials.
Okay.
Underline and use different colors and highlighters.
Okay.
So that is a visual learner. Do you do that?
A little bit. Not as much as I read something and remember what it looks like.
When you read something and you remember what it looks like, do you mean that you remember exactly what the words look like?
So right now, the first time I really realized what I was doing in my memory was back in 6th grade. I was in I think it was World History 2 or something like that. And I remember even now the layout of the page and the words that were written on it.
Really?
In the textbook.
Why? Why that time? Why that thing?
Because I think it stuck out because that's the first time I actually realized what I was doing. And that and one of the reasons I remember that so well is because I remembered trying to explain to someone, yeah, it can be found right here on this page. Wait, how do I... And then
Right.
And so, and then I thought of it a few years later, whenever I was a senior, and looked back on it, and it was the same.
Well, do you think that's like a photographic memory?
Photographic...
Or selective?
It's very selective.
Yeah.
It is... Because I do not have a photographic memory.
Yeah.
Because I know that things change visually. For me, they visually change mentally.
What?
Yeah.
So say that again. What do
In
you
my
mean?
head, the things I remember seeing can change over time, and with photographic memory, that doesn't happen.
Do you mean like your memory?
No, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of eidetic memory, or however it's pronounced, which is perfect memory recall, where nothing changes, and you remember literally everything. I don't have that.
Oh.
No, photographic memory, it's more selective than eidetic. I don't even know if that's how you pronounce it, eidetic or not, but it is a lot more, I'd almost say sporadic or something like that, but I don't have that either. I just remember things. But going back to what were the 4 things? Sorry.
That's okay. It's visual, auditory.
Reading, writing, and kinetic? Or
Yeah.
not,
Read, write.
Yeah. So what's the difference between read, write, and visual? Sorry.
That's okay. Well, the visual, they learn through visual displays of
Okay.
information.
Okay.
That's mainly how a visual learner is going to best retain the information.
Okay.
Auditory is they hear it. So you don't necessarily have to be seeing something as long as you hear it. You don't have to see it being done or anything as long as you hear it.
Right.
Which is interesting because I think people do one of these over the others. They might retain the information better, but I always think it does change depending on the topic and depending on what it is. So auditory, well, it's learning, retaining information, but
Right.
like books on tape or they're in
Right. Or
CD or little
music.
Yeah.
Music, you can read the paper of music, the sheet paper, but it won't have the same effect as if you were listening to it.
So in auditory learning, so obviously that means that you learn through listening. So that means like lectures or discussions are a big deal. That's one of the best ways for somebody that learns this way. That's better for them. So reading, it's interesting, reading text out loud. So somebody that's getting something read to them might retain it better than if they were just reading it themselves.
Okay.
That's what we were talking before about when you were in college, having a recorder and then being able to play it back. In that case, then you would not be overloaded with too much sensory input.
Right.
So you could just listen back on your own time and take in what it is that you kind of isolate it and just listen to it.
At that time, yeah. Whereas I could write down the notes and have all the notes instead of having the board be erased and write more notes for the professor and everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But for you still it was just overload.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people with autism that have gone to college and are very successful.
Yeah.
And for you, the thing was, why do I have to learn something I don't want to learn? Like, why
Yeah.
that's not significant to this particular, field of study. So why do I have to, learn that? So
Yeah.
it's like, why do you have to take a gym class? If you're studying physics.
That I can understand, but an English class or English course, you have to take math and gym, and it's like what?
Yeah. So anyway, lectures and tutorials. That's how auditory learners retain the most information.
Mm-hmm.
And then the read and write learning is, through reading and writing.
Mm-hmm.
So, notes, textbooks, taking the notes of a lecture, which again, for you, that in that particular setting was just overwhelming, wasn't it? Just
right.
too much input all at once.
Right.
Because I remember you saying, if you were to listen to something, a lecture, since that's what we're talking about right now in this particular way of learning, the one right before this, if you're going to listen to a lecture, if all you heard was that lecture, you might be okay.
But having to interact with it, like if it's a discussion kind of lecture or have questions.
Well, let's just say somebody's moving around in a seat.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody's shoes squeaking. Walking down outside the classroom in the hallway. Somebody, tearing a piece of paper out of a notebook.
Yeah.
Or the lead squeaking on the paper.
Right. And let alone, like I was saying earlier, trying to also take the notes from on the board, while trying to get the notes down on the lecture. It doesn't work.
It doesn't work, and that's why we even talked about taking a picture of the lecture, of the board, so you wouldn't have to retain that information on top of everything else.
Right.
Because I'm with you on that one. It's hard if there's so much input, and people talk so fast. How do you write fast enough to take the notes?
Right.
It's always been something that's difficult.
So the reading and writing, is that...
It's about lists. This is lists into multiple choice questions, rearranging a list into multiple choice questions. I think this one is really, this is important for me when I write material, when I'm writing jokes, when I'm rearranging things and creating like the flow of it. Yeah. It's kind of like, I think I told you before, what I do is like a roller coaster. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's and you kind of need to string the words together and the bits together, to keep the flow.
Yeah. Which is probably, that analogy is probably the best way to explain why I got good at helping you with jokes. Whenever a laugh is not getting enough that it should or whatever, I have suggestions.
Yeah, because sometimes I'll write a joke, or I call them bits. They're bits. Anyway, I'll do it, and then it works. It's funny, but it's not.
It doesn't get the laugh.
It's missing something.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to go into which one it was, but I just had this bit that worked.
Yeah.
And it got a response just about 100% of the time. But I was going to get rid of it because I thought it wasn't good enough. I just didn't want something that was, it worked, but it was missing something.
Right.
And then the other day on stage, I ad-libbed something at the end.
Yeah.
And then I was like, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And so this bit that was about to go in the book that's, it's not the trash because I don't throw anything away, but I just take it out and I don't use it.
Storage.
Yeah, pretty much. And it almost went there. And then I ad-libbed something in the moment on stage, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's it. And so now it works.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
But the cadence and everything is what I'm talking about.
Right.
Is that not just the cadence, but the flow of it.
Right, sure.
And that's one of the big reasons I started to understand how jokes are supposed to work. Was that it clicked that I needed to have a flow of something or sense of timing.
Well, I don't know if you've ever mentioned this or not, but there's been times when I'm working on something and it's just not coming together. And there have been, I would say, a number of times that I go to you with just the words.
Yeah.
Say, okay, and I'm not, I'm just saying, this is the bit. It's not what's missing. And a lot of times what you've done is taken what I thought was so it has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you like jokes, you like doing this with me because of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not some abstract something that doesn't end. It does end. And we know that, and you know that now. And so a lot of times I would take something to you and you go, well, we'll put this first. I'd be like, oh, man. All right, thanks, bye.
And then you go from there, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, the writing. So the writing part, I guess it says it's important to reread and rewrite textbook and lecture notes. So just a way of kind of make sure that people that learn that way, take it in, absorb it, and retain it.
Right. And
it's important too that the words that are used are understood.
Right.
Was somebody that learns this way.
Right. It's paraphrasing in a complete manner. So it's not really paraphrasing, but it's putting it in your own words.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah, I think this is the way that I learn. Is the reading and writing learning. I think that's how I do it.
And then there's kinesthetic learning, which is learning by doing.
Mm-hmm.
In the moment.
Mm-hmm.
To learn what you're doing as you're doing it.
Mm-hmm. Which is interesting about this, because we know that about you, that if you do it, you retain the information better than any other way of absorbing it.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. It uses all of your senses. Your sight, touch, taste, smell, and hearing.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the very things that, in conjunction with one another, overwhelm you, typically.
Yes.
So how do you take this thing that typically overwhelms you, and that is it simultaneously the way that you learn?
So let me first. Your original question was which one do I use, or
Yes.
or ones do I use?
Mm-hmm.
So my primary one that I use is kinesthetic. I learn by doing.
Mm-hmm.
With a slightly lesser part of my learning process is visual. I think a good something else I should point out is that when I was younger, it was more, the kinesthetic learning was more even with the visual learning. Because I would read so much, and even now, if I read a story or any kind of thing like that, I'm not seeing the words anymore. I'm seeing what's occurring.
Mm-hmm.
And with that memory of the textbook, I'm seeing the layout of the page and where the words are that are not just important, but just the layout of it and everything. I'm seeing the page itself.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever I'm at the library, if I have to go and find a book, if it's just one or two, or even just one especially, I can take a quick note of what it is I'm looking for in my head. I look for the last 4 numbers of the thing, and I look it up like that. It's more complicated than that, but I don't. It's like I take a snapshot in my mind that doesn't last very long, but I found that if I don't focus on what it actually reads as, but I focus on the image, it lasts a little bit longer. It was just weird. But
Well, I know that if I ask you to do something, you question yourself about it. That seems to bring on anxiety.
yes.
Like what am I asking? What do you need to do? Let's just say wiping off the counter.
Mm-hmm.
If I just said, "Hey, would you clean the counter?" That would bring some anxiety because you wouldn't know what I wanted exactly. You wouldn't know what to use. You wouldn't know where to start.
Where to move things or
Yes.
anything else like that.
Yeah, or do you need to move things?
Right.
Or, But if I say I had, if I were to get some spray from under the sink, get a paper towel, and showed you that this is, could you please, this is how I do it. Do something similar to that, or just like this, if you would, and
you give me directions.
Mm-hmm. But I show you. When I show you, you retain it.
Yeah, because then I'm immediately doing it right after. Yeah, and
Cool.
So it's more kinesthetic learning than it is audio-visual.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, I went to this site, and I'm going to say the name of it. It says, how do you know what type of learner you are? And first of all, things change.
Yeah.
So you might have been a certain type when you were younger, and then
Yeah.
through the years it changes. So just because you used to be something doesn't mean it is the best way for you to learn today.
Right.
Anyway, it's called vark-learn.com. So it's VARK-LEARN.com. And that helps people to know what kind of learner they are.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. So I have a question about, okay, so that's the kind of learner you are. How did you learn what you're doing at work?
So initially, whenever I had gotten the job, I was told to shadow the other people that were in the same position that were already there.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, that's perfect for you.
yeah, so it was very much a kinesthetic learning thing,
Mm-hmm.
where I would be shown what to do, and then they'd give me a chance to do the same. And in the process of learning all of that, and learning what I'm supposed to do, I found that there were steps that I could do to make it easier for me or for someone else to learn how to do this and when to do this and that. And it was really it was structured, but it had enough leeway to do it my way whenever it was me doing it.
Hmm.
And in over a short amount of time, I would find little shortcuts or whatever that worked for me to make it easier to do what I do, and would still get the job done correctly. And some of that comes down to experience, that's basically what kinesthetic learning is experience.
Mm-hmm.
And what is it you're asking?
Okay. Well, I was asking you about how they showed you your job when you first started working. And you're saying that somebody showed you how to do it, which was perfect for you. The thing that I'm curious about is that a lot of times when you learn something, when you see something, it's very difficult for you to vary from what you've been shown.
Mm.
Because if something is supposed to be a certain way, then it's supposed to be a certain way, and going out of that lane doesn't work for you.
Yeah,
I'm interested in this. So how did you work through coming up with your own way of doing the same job?
So there's two factors to this. One is that the people that I work for there at the
Mm-hmm.
library
Mm-hmm.
are absolutely supportive of what I need and what I do. And the other huge factor to it is that as I was shadowing, I was also told, not just by the person I was shadowing, but also by those higher ups, that if you can find your own way of doing this that is easier for you and still follows what we need to have happen, go for it.
Okay, so essentially, this needs to get done, and this needs to get done, and this needs to get done. And there's a time frame, and there's a certain time, not only a time frame, but there is a particular time that something needs to happen. And basically, you were shown, this is how I do it. This is important, this has to happen this time. But you can figure this out on your own around that particular must do at this time.
And it wasn't even that it was mandatory to do it a certain way.
Mm.
I mean, yes, there are a lot of things that have that there,
Mm-hmm.
but it is flexible enough for me to have these, not shortcuts,
Mm-hmm.
but
Well, I say it this way. I say that you save yourself steps.
yes, like if you have a whole bunch of books on a shelf, one of the movable shelves, to put them back on the regular shelves, why wouldn't you put them in order before you start moving the cart
Mm-hmm.
that has the shelf on it? Why wouldn't you do that before that, so that you're not going back and forth
Mm-hmm.
one time after the other? So I have a path I go through,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a set path that I follow.
Mm-hmm.
That is a pattern.
And you came up with that?
I came up with that for me, yes.
So the thing that I found interesting is that you used the word flexible.
Yes.
When you discovered how to do it, though, you're no longer really flexible, right? Like, you do things your set way, like as a ritual. A routine.
Yes. Within that routine, I have made it so that I made the routine with leeway, which I know is shocking thing, I guess.
It is.
But because I won't always know what books are going to go back where,
Okay.
or anything that else needs to be put away wherever or whenever.
So I have a question for you
Mm-hmm.
that it just made me think of. When you see a book that's going to go to a shelf, we know that you say that when you read, you experience those words. You don't just read them, you see them.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Do you sometimes view the books themselves as... Other people might say, I have to put these books back on the shelf in order. But do you kind of put them where they fit? Like, are you kind of taking them back home? Are you putting them where they deserve to be? It just feels like to me you put so much care into what you're doing that it's not just like, I got to put this book,
Right.
alphabetized, or I have to put them in the correct genre. It's that you're putting them where they belong, where they can shine.
I guess. I've never really thought of it like that. And one of the biggest issues that I face at the library is when someone pulls a book off to read what is about or whatever, to see if they want to borrow it, and they put it back, but they don't put it back in the right spot, or they put it in backwards so the pages are facing outward.
Oh,
So many
who
times.
would do that?
So many.
Maybe it's easy for them because it slides in easier because you're not then... I don't know.
I don't know either. I've had entire shelves of books pushed all the way back.
Mm-hmm.
Like someone had walked by and just had their arm out and pushed it all the way back.
Maybe they did.
I know they did. I had to put it back. And because at the library, all of the books, if possible, should be equal to the lip of the shelf.
Mm-hmm.
And the only times that wouldn't happen, when they're at where they're supposed to be, is if they're too big in one dimension or another.
Mm-hmm.
Like if they're too tall, they have to go sideways, and usually that means that they're sticking out from the lip a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so it varies, and sometimes you can't do anything about that.
Right. It makes you crazy though.
I understand that happens, and I deal with that. It's whenever it can stand upright just fine, and someone puts it flat and puts it in, and so many different ways it can be frustrating.
Right.
But every time that there's a book like that, or a book that's out of place, I have to pull it off and check it into it's called an in-house system, to make sure it wasn't checked out. Because that's happened before in the past, is that someone checks something out and someone else puts it back in either the wrong spot or whatever, which is also why every once in a while we'll go through the entire library and check all the books through the in-house system.
To make sure that they haven't been checked out?
Yes.
Oh. So do you mean that so if I checked out a book and I brought it back to the library, I didn't know, or I didn't think this through, and instead of turning it back in, I just went back and put it on the shelf where I thought it came from? Because how would a book go back on the shelf if it's already been checked out?
It never left the library is one easy reason.
People check it out but don't leave the library with it?
A lot of times people check out multiple things at once, and so something could be left behind where they checked it out, and someone else, trying to be a nice person or whatever, will put it back on the shelf in the general area where it's supposed to be. Which is not supposed to happen. But it does. And so we have to check everything, and whenever that happens, we also, I say we, people in my position are the ones who do that, who double check them and everything, and make sure. And once we pull all the books off of one shelf and check through them, we also then make sure they're in alphabetical order and or numerical order, whatever, depending on what kind they are. And we also clean the shelf, and then we put them back on in visually appealing manner.
How do you clean the shelf?
Dusting.
And did they show you how to do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's easy. Because books are square. Usually there's also the kids' books. They're sometimes weirdly shaped.
Yes.
But it's easy to clean that in the shelf.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. So, alphabetized, and it's like your favorite.
Yeah, and sometimes there's all these little rules that will either, one may have precedence for one area as opposed to another, when it could technically be in both, it's supposed to be in one, not the other. And so it's constantly keeping an eye on all that stuff.
So it's not really, so the things that you talk about are not so much how you get there can be flexible, but what needs to happen is kind of rigid. And
Them's the rules.
Them's the rules, which is why you love your job so much.
Yeah.
All the things you're talking about. I mean, boy, if the people in your life could be like books, like you, this clear cut, and this is where you go. This is what you do. This is,
there wouldn't be conflict or wars.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And yeah. So it.
Well, but you're describing this. I'm thinking everything you're saying. I'm like, well, of course. No wonder you love this so much. It's just it's not only is it how you think and how you feel like life should be, but it's involving your favorite thing of all time, which is books.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And.
So, like, by the time you're done with a shift, by the time you leave, it's like, oh, all is right with the world.
Yeah.
I mean, it feels good.
It does. It's draining, though. Mm-hmm. It really is.
Sure.
Just because of all the effort I put through to not just keep everything in order, but I'm also directing people to where they either to help them look for what they're looking for on the shelves, or to direct them to who can help them. Mm-hmm. And so I'm doing that a lot. And on top of that, of putting books away and everything, there's also the book drops that happen every other hour.
Which is when you have to go outside, so people can drive through the parking lot, and instead of coming into the library to return books, they put them into the
book drop.
Book drop. It looks like a big mailbox.
It's basically what it is, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
you push a cart out there, and then you
unlock the thing, pull them out, pull the books out, or DVDs or CDs, whatever, because we have all those too. Mm-hmm. And put them in the basket and go over and close that back up. Then I go over to the other book drop, which is close to the front entrance, and do the same thing there. Then I come in and I clean everything.
Do I go to the front entrance?
What do you mean?
I don't remember 2 book drops. I only remember 1.
There's one right next to the flags.
Oh. Yeah. Oh, okay.
Which I also take down at the end of the day.
Oh.
Well, not end of the day, 5 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
Because the city, that's when we're supposed to take down the flags, because most of the businesses in the city shut down at 5.
Yeah.
So that's when we're supposed to pull the flags down.
Okay. What do you do with them?
Fold them and store them.
they teach you how to fold them a certain way?
I was told we need to put this into a triangle. Oh, you mean like the military flags? Okay. And I folded it like a paper football, and it worked.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found it hilarious because whenever I've taught several people after I was hired how to fold the flags, and before I let them try with the flags, I gave them a sheet of 8.5 by 11 paper, and told them. So, I drew a little square on one corner for what the American flag would look like, and I told them, so you're going to practice with this.
Yeah.
To see how you're supposed to do it.
Right, right. Well, your dad would be so proud. I mean, you got to tell him this after, because he was a signalman.
Yeah.
In the Navy for 21 years.
Yeah.
So what that means is that he not only did the semaphore and the flashing lights and stuff to communicate with other people, but he was in charge of all the flags, dressing up the ship, and so that's super important to him that flags are cared for and given the respect, in his opinion, that they deserve. And yeah, he would be. That's why you say flags. Dad's license plate on his motorcycle says flags.
Yeah.
Because that's what they would call him sometimes. SIGs, short for signalman, but also they'd call him flags.
Oh, cool.
We'd just say he flags. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, he's gonna like to hear this.
Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. So
going back to the learning thing, I guess.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So repetition is helpful to you in learning because of the style that you learn.
Kinesthetic, yeah.
Best way.
The way I described it, I think, I don't know how it said it on the website that you just looked at.
Mm-hmm.
Kinesthetic learning is learning via experience.
Mm-hmm. Like by hands-on, by doing it.
Yeah.
And what helped you, I think I asked you this, but when you started the job at the library, what helped you the very most? Was it those people showing you how it's done?
Yeah, and that whenever I had questions, I could ask, and I would get the attention I needed to have it answered properly. Right.
I think we've said this before, but it can't be said enough that the people that your bosses, are such kind people. They're just really supportive and will answer any questions, will take the time, and as busy as they are, will make time to answer the questions and to help to give guidance. That's really cool.
And if I do have an issue, they do their best to work with me to work through it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you do anything in the process of learning that's like any repetitive behaviors? Like, is there something that you do a certain way every time? Or not necessarily? It's just easiest for you if somebody shows you how to do something and then you doing it.
Right.
So somebody there while you're doing it is the best solution.
Right. So I have a perfect example for this. So whenever I first got the job, they had just reopened after COVID had hit.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to wear a mask. I had to clean literally everything that came in. And so I had to figure out the best way for me, at least, to clean all of these items. And at this point, I have a very set routine for how I do it. I figured out that I order everything into stacks of 6 or less, because sometimes it doesn't come out right. But of those stacks, I try and make it so that the one above it will fit within the shape of the one below it. So...
on what?
of books or DVD cases.
And what do you mean above it and below it? You mean
stacks of 6.
Okay.
But each one above it will fit. Like if you're looking straight down.
So you don't mean on a shelf?
No. While I'm getting ready to clean.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So I have them on the counter. Put them into groups of 6 like that, and I go from the bottom up with 2 items for each time I pull one out. Bottom one on the left, second one just to that, and push them together. And I spray onto the covers. Take the one on the left, wipe it down on the front, up and down on the face.
Mm-hmm.
Then I do the outside edge. Then I flip it onto its front while holding it. Do the same thing with the back. Then I do the spine. And then I open it up to first make sure that there's nothing in it. Like sometimes there's bookmarks or whatever in there.
Mm-hmm.
And also to check that the security tag is still in it. And that there's no damage to the pages. And then once all that's done, I set it and do the next one.
Wow.
And I do them in groups of 6 because it's easier to carry and hand it to the people who check it in.
Okay. So you do that in a certain location of the
Yes.
library. Okay.
Yes, right next to the front desk.
What's your favorite part of your job?
My job.
All of it?
All of it, yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So these books are so loved.
Yes.
By you. So it's just like I wish people could see your face and your eyes while you're talking about it right now, because you're just kind of beaming. Yeah, it's really cool. So is there any part? So dealing with the people is the most exhausting part of your day.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I've said this before on different podcasts, but whenever I'm working there, I can almost see it visually that it's like a giant program of if-then statements.
It's your favorite.
Yeah.
If then.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And where if I can't make it in at this time, call this number.
Mm-hmm.
If that number doesn't work, then call this number.
Right.
And that's just the start of it.
Right.
If I can be at work, I'll try and be there a little bit early, and then I'll come in. So if I can come in, then
Mm-hmm.
I come in a little early
Mm-hmm.
so that I can read.
Right.
And just
And so you have no worries.
yeah.
So you're relaxed and
get in a good mindset to be there.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So it's everything I do in there has an if-then basically.
Mm-hmm.
That has been over the time I've been there hashed out to figure out what I need to do.
Mm-hmm.
Heck, I even have an if-then for if I don't know something, then ask.
Yes.
So I can figure out how to place it into the if-then.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so you learned by being shown how to do it and then somebody watching you do it. So you were told how to do it, you were shown how to do it, and then somebody oversaw you doing it.
Yes.
And then you took that, and because you're brilliant, you then came up with a way that works for you.
While asking questions and making sure that it was okay and that it was proper and all this, that, and the other.
And since then, you have taken your way of doing things and have taught other people how to do it your way. And your bosses are thrilled with that because they say, if Josh is it a mentor?
Yeah, sure.
Mentor, and for new hires, they're going to be fine.
Yeah.
Because they are going to know everything, all the ins and outs, the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing I do make clear to the people that I've mentored,
mm-hmm.
whatever, is that this is my way of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean that it would be the best way for you.
Mm. I need to look at the time and the day and like write this down, because you just said that you go to work and tell people that they can do it their own way. It doesn't have to be done your way. And for 34 years, I've been having to do it your way.
If it ends in the way that it's supposed to be, and it's gone through the proper process of everything as like it's supposed to,
mm-hmm.
getting it back onto the shelf in a way that makes sense to you, that's fine.
Yeah.
Because I know that not everyone has to have everything as ordered as I do.
Right. That's a huge statement. The things that you're talking about, I'm of course poking fun.
Yeah, but you're also semi-serious about that.
Yeah, because things have to be very routine and absolute. Yeah. And it's just you deserve credit for being able to recognize that other people might have an easier time if the steps they take are varied, as long as they get to the end point is
right.
what matters.
Right. And one of the biggest things that I tell the new hires
mm-hmm.
is to ask questions. And if something comes up that's not normal, whenever, even if they may believe they know, if they're not 100% sure, ask. Mm-hmm. And ask to find out and double check.
Mm-hmm.
And that if something does come up that's different, to let someone else know that something's going on, to keep everyone in the loop so that nothing breaks down.
And that's a huge part for you, because you need the option of getting questions answered.
Yes.
Because if not, you stress about things. You're just not sure. And what'll happen, and I've seen it happen before, is that if you don't get answers that you need to be able to move forward on something,
I can't move forward.
No, the anxiety builds too much, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And then you're just not sure. And
it can throw the rest of my day out of whack.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. So that's another thing that's positive at this place, is that you're encouraged to ask questions.
Yes.
Which is outstanding.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, that's so awesome. That's so awesome. So I'm just, first of all, just so grateful that you are happy in what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that it means so much to you, and that you are so valued and you feel valued where you are, because that's just huge. Is there anything else?
I guess a quick question is, what was the initial question then for all of this? It
was, what's your style of learning?
Okay.
And it kind of roundabout way, it makes a lot of sense. So that was the initial question, is how do you learn? And what's really cool is that I just found out that one of the reasons that you are so suited for this job and you're doing so well and excelling there is because it is the very things that you need the most in your life. The operation from beginning to end works for you because it's how you think, it's how you feel, it's what you need, it's how you process, it's how you learn.
Yeah.
All of it. And so,
with the leeway of finding more to better.
Mm-hmm.
To better.
And you're encouraged
in
that.
Yeah. Well, I'm just encouraged all around for it. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right. So, I want to let everybody know that we have been working to change the website.
Mm.
We've added things, we've changed things. We had said before that the pictures of, which I call the Joshack.
Oh my gosh, I hate that name.
I know. So, the pictures of your space out there are up on the website now. There's we're going to change the name of it, but for now it says links, bits and pieces. So there's a link up there that said that. Yeah, a tab up top that says that. If you click that, at the top is going to be those pictures, and also just below that are just things that I've in the past put up on Instagram. What we're going to start doing is adding pictures weekly, updating things, and then when I go back to Instagram, anything that I post there will pop up on there as well.
Okay.
What we're going to do as well, that's the page that you're going to find links that we put up from things that I've found interesting. Probably what we'll do with this podcast, we'll put the website that I'd mentioned earlier that you can go and find out the best way to learn. I'll put that up there on that page. So it just says for right now, links, bits and pieces. That's going to change. At the point where we came to have to title that tab, our brains were fried. So it's all that we came up with so far, but we'll come up with something better. But that's where it is. That's where everything new is going up. But on the other pages, two things are changing. Like my stand-up schedule is there. If anybody is in the Newport News area this weekend, I'm performing at Causey's both tonight and tomorrow night. So come if you are in the area and you come out, say hi.
Yeah. Well, it's being posted today, so yeah.
Yeah, tonight and tomorrow. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
So so come out, and if you're in the area, come out and see me, and make sure you introduce yourself to me. I'd love to meet you.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you listen to us and you like what we're doing, give us 5 stars, please. Wherever you listen, that would just be awesome.
Yeah.
And
helps us get seen by more people.
Yeah. Yep. So thank you everybody so much for listening and hanging out with us, and we just appreciate you so much.
Yeah.
And as I always tell you, hug the people that are close to you.
Yeah.
Hold them tight. Yeah. So we'll talk to you next week. Love you.
Bye.